Pakistan has appointed little-known Senator Anwar-ul-Haq Kakar as caretaker prime minister to steer the nuclear-armed nation through an economic and political crisis until a new government is elected. Kakar was named the caretaker prime minister today by opposition leader Raza Riaz Ahmad following a meeting with outgoing Premier Shehbaz Sharif. Good evening, I'm Abhyuday Shrestha and these are the headlines of the hour. Creation of employment opportunities in the country limited to slogans even after a lapse of 67 years when the first 5-year plan started. Government fails in stopping youth exodus. Provincial governments fail to meet public expectations even in their second term, blame the federal government of indifference towards formulating required laws and interference of their jurisdiction. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and opposition leader Raza Riaz agreed to name Senator Anwar-ul-Haq Kakar as the caretaker premier to oversee elections. And co-hosts Australia reached the FIFA Women's World Cup semi-finals, edging past France 7-6 in a historic penalty shootout. England also defeat Colombia 2-1 to book a place in the last four. It has been 24 years since the government started celebrating International Youth Day to address the issues of youths of the country. Structures such as the Ministry of Youth, Youth Self-Employment Fund and National Youth Council were formed for the youths. Furthermore, the National Youth Policy was formed back in 2014. However, a large number of youths have been going abroad amid government's failure to formulate effective structures, policy and programs. Around 2,000 youths leave the country on a daily basis seeking for employment opportunities abroad amid the government's failure to intensify development works and generate employment opportunities in the country. 750,000 youths went abroad seeking opportunities during the last fiscal year alone, while in the previous year, the number of youths that left the country was 630,000. Around 500,000 youths in the country enter the labor market annually. Youths are considered the backbone of the nation and have been prioritized in government's every 5-year plan. However, the trend of youths leaving the country is on the rise amid the plan's failure to meet targets. Youths have been leaving the country seeking employment opportunities in Korea and Malaysia, which are countries that had once begun their journey of development together with Nepal. Youths have opted to risk their lives to reach Europe and the US illegally. However, many have been stranded in war-torn countries during the process. Meanwhile, the government is facing difficulty in monitoring such events. Likewise, the number of youths leaving the country seeking for better education is also on the rise. 110,000 students received no objection letters from the Ministry of Education during the last fiscal year. According to the National Census 2021, 42% of the country's total population comprises of youths, which is 2.4 million. The number of youths in the country during the National Census 2011 was 40%, which was 16 million. In our Public Voice segment today, we have asked people in several provinces regarding ways to retain the youth labor force in the country. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
स्टार्टअपहरु गर्नलाई सरकारले सहुलियत रूपमा लोनहरु दिने हो भने मेन्टरशिप दिने हो भने चाहिँ युवाहरु चाहिँ नेपालमै बस्दै
सरकारले अब प्राविधिक शिक्षातर्फ ध्यान दिनु पर्यो अनि त्यही अनुसारको रोजगारीको सृजना गर्नु पर्यो
अध्ययन सँगसँगैको चाहिँ रोजगारीको सृजना गर्नु पर्यो
दक्षता अनुसारको जागिरहरु पाए भने मान्छे विदेश सिन बाध्य हुँदैन
उचित रोजगारीको अवसरहरु पनि ल्याउन जरुरी छ
यो देशमा सहज रूपले आफ्नो पेशा व्यवसाय गरी खाने वातावरण चाहिँ बनाउन जरुरी छ
विदेश गएर भाडा माझ्यो भने पैसा पाइन्छ भन्ने मान्छेको चाहिँ मनस्थिति भएर नि सबैजना अहिले विदेश जान थाल्नु भएको छ
दक्षता अनुसार युवाहरुलाई काम दिन पर्यो
युवा लक्षित रोजगारीको कार्यक्रम ल्याउन पर्यो
उत्पादनमूलक संस्थाहरु फ्याक्ट्रीहरु तपाईको राज्यले व्यवस्था गर्नु पर्यो
सिपमूलक शिक्षा सिकाएर प्रत्येकलाई आत्मनिर्भर बनाउनु पर्छ
युवाहरुलाई कृषि र पशुपालनमा जोड्नु पर्दछ
उनीहरुलाई स्वरोजगार बनाउने
कारखानाको सृजना गर्नु पर्यो
स्थानीय तहले तालिमहरुको व्यवस्था गरेर स्वदेशमै रोजगारी पनि दिन सकिन्छ
Provincial governments are in the first year of their second term. However, the general public have complained that the provincial governments have failed to meet their expectations while they are unwilling to admit their flaws. The provincial governments blamed the federal government of indifference towards formulating required laws and interference of their jurisdiction. The provincial governments recently have been busy with preparing work plans that need to be carried out by the federal government. The general public had hoped that the provincial government would indulge in improving public services and development works during their second term. However, the provincial governments have been busy with preparing lists of works that need to be carried out by the federal government. As per the legal provision, education, electricity, irrigation, water resources, forest, communication, trade, mines and agriculture, among other sectors, fall under the jurisdiction of the provincial governments. The provincial governments have been facing difficulty amid lack of jurisdiction for land acquisition, which has prevented the authorities from constructing buildings and projects. Likewise, repetition of projects is apparent amid absence of their categorization. The authorities have been demanding for the categorization of projects and clarity, saying various small projects have been kept under the jurisdiction of the federal government, which has created confusion. Meanwhile, the provincial governments have been relying on the federal government for budget instead of exploring ways to generate funds. The provincial governments have remained without business amid failure to work in line with their jurisdiction. However, they blame the federal government for lack of assistance in issues including the Federal Civil Service Act and police management. The provincial government has failed to manage resources to ensure access to higher education. There is a general call on the concerned authority to emphasize on improving public services that fall under their jurisdiction to meet the demands and expectations of the general public. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
But before that, let's take a look at the results from yesterday's poll. Yesterday, we had asked you what could be the reason for the failure to review the minimum basic salary, which should have been done every 2 years. 36% voted for A, lack of policy level commitment. 26% voted for B, reluctance of employers. And 38% voted for C, excuse of economic crisis. And here's today's question. Why has the trend of parties saving their leaders involved in controversies increased? Your options are A, lack of ethics, B, ignoring good governance, and C, protecting their leaders. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And it's time now for the international update. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and opposition leader Raza Riaz agreed today to name Senator Anwar ul Haq Kakar as the caretaker premier to oversee elections. Kakar, a lesser-known politician from the southwestern province of Balochistan, will name a cabinet and head a government to steer the nuclear-armed nation through an economic and political crisis until a new government is elected. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi approved Kakar's appointment. Under Pakistan's constitution, a neutral caretaker government oversees national elections, which must be held within 90 days of the dissolution of the parliament's lower house, which in this instance means early November. The choice of caretaker prime minister has assumed heightened importance this time because the candidate will have extra powers to make policy decisions on economic matters, and amid fears the elections may be delayed by as much as 6 months. The Election Commission has to draw new boundaries for hundreds of federal and provincial constituencies, and based on that, it will give an election date.
Sports news.
The Nepali national cricket team will be playing a series in Malaysia ahead of the ICC Women's T20 World Cup Asia Region qualifiers. Teams from 4 nations will be participating in the series that kicks off on 22nd of August later this month. According to the Cricket Association of Nepal, along with Nepal, hosts Malaysia, Hong Kong and Kuwait will be participating in the series in preparation for the Women's T20 World Cup Asia Region qualifiers. Nepal will face Hong Kong in their first match of the series on 22nd of August later this month. Malaysia will play against Kuwait on the same day. Nepal are up against Kuwait, while Hong Kong will face Malaysia on 23rd of August. Likewise, Nepal will clash against Malaysia on 25th of August, while Hong Kong will face Kuwait on the same day. All the 4 teams will play a match each against each team. The 2 teams securing most points will play in the final, which will be held on 26th of August. The match for 3rd and 4th place will also be held on the same day. All the matches will be played at the Biomass Stadium in Malaysia. Right after the series, Nepal will be playing the Women's T20 World Cup Asia Region qualifiers, which will be held in Malaysia from 31st of August till 9th of September. A total of 11 teams will be playing in the qualifiers. Nepal are in Group A alongside hosts Malaysia, Bahrain, Bhutan, Qatar, and the UAE. Likewise, Group B comprises of teams from China, Hong Kong, Kuwait, Thailand, and Myanmar. The 2 top teams from each group will advance into the semi-finals. The 2 teams that reach the finals will be able to play in the global qualifiers in 2024. Nepal has announced a 14-member squad for the Women's T20 World Cup Asia Region qualifiers under the captaincy of Rubina Chetri. Bukayo Saka's superb first-half strike helped Arsenal begin their English Premier League campaign with a 2-1 win over Nottingham Forest today. In the match played at Arsenal's home ground Emirates Stadium today, Eddie Nketiah opened the scoring for Arsenal in the 26th minute. 21-year-old England forward Saka doubled Arsenal's lead in the 32nd minute with a curling effort from outside the area that nestled itself into the top left corner of the Forest net, well past the reach of former Gunners keeper Matt Turner. But last season's English Premier League runners-up, Arsenal, had to survive a late charge by Forest after substitute Taiwo Awoniyi scored in the 83rd minute to cut the deficit to 2-1. Arsenal held on to the lead and secured full 3 points. In other EPL matches played today, defending champions Manchester City blanked Burnley 3-0, Crystal Palace edged past Sheffield United 1-0, Bournemouth and West Ham settled for a 1-1 draw, Brighton thumped Luton Town 4-1, and Fulham blanked Everton 1-0. That's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Good night.